Hello, my dear student of class 10. So, today I am here with you with the first chapter from your SST geography session, and the name of the chapter which we are going to deal today is Resources and Development. We already know what are resources, we already did in the class 8. In this video I will just give you a short brief explanation of this chapter. So, resources. First of all, let me tell you what are resources for your short revision. Resources are anything that can be used to satisfy a needs, or anything which satisfy the human needs is a resources. So everything whatever available in our environment, everything which are available in our environment is a resources, and that humans value is capable of satisfying their needs. And the resources must be technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable. The resources, whatever we used, must be accepted by our culture, and it also have some economic value, and it is technologically accessible. Okay, here you can see resources. There are two types of resources, as you can see there: natural resources and human resources. And in natural resources you can see renewable and non-renewable. You know what is natural resources? Resources which is made by the nature. Yeah, means the resources that are drawn from the nature and used without much modification are called natural resources. For example, the air we breathe, the water in our rivers and lakes, the soil minerals are the natural resources. Many of these resources are free gift of nature and can be used directly. In some cases, tools and technology may be needed to use the natural resources in the best possible way. And the natural resources are of as you can see are of two types, that are renewable and non-renewable. And here human resources means the resources which are made by human: the structure and the institution, quality and the quantity. Okay, so in renewable resources we can have continuous or flow, for example winds and water, or the biologically natural vegetation and wildlife. And in non-renewable resources we have the recyclable resources like metal, and non-recyclable resources like fossil fuels. Okay, so let me go ahead. The process of the transformation of the resources available in our environment involves in the interactive relation between the nature, technology and institution. So the transformation of the resources or the things, the transformation of the things, whatever available in our environment involves the relationship, interactive relationship between our nature, technology we used, and the institution where the resources are made. Human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate the economic development, and whatever the resources made in the institution that have some economic value, and that accelerate the economic development of our country. So there are some classification of resources. Let me tell you what are the classification of resources. Resources are classified into the four types. Okay, so first types of the resources, it is on the base of their origin, like biotic and abiotic. Resources can be biotic or abiotic. Abiotic resources are non-living, while the biotic resources are living. Soil, rocks and minerals are abiotic, but the plants and animals are the biotic resources. Just listen my words carefully. Based on the origin, resources are classified in biotic and abiotic. Abiotic resources are non-living, while the biotic resources are living. And the examples of the abiotic resources are the soil, rocks, and minerals. And the examples of the biotic resources are plants and animals. Resources are also classified on the basis of their accessibility, means whether they are renewable or non-renewable. As you already know, or as I already explained you, that natural resources can be broadly categorized into the renewable and non-renewable resources. So renewable resources are those which get renewed or replenished quickly, but the non-renewable resources are those which have a limited stock, and once the stock are exhausted, it may be take a thousands of years to be renewed. It takes more than a thousand years to be renewed. So renewable resources are the resources which can be renewed quickly, but the non-renewable resources take thousands of years to be renewed. For example, coal, petroleum, and the natural gases are some example of the natural non-renewable resources. And again, the resources are classified into on the basis of ownership, whether it is individual, community, national, and international. We will discuss later on what is individual, community, national, and international resources with examples. And last one is on the basis of the status of the development, potential, whether it is a potential, whether it is developed, stocked, or reserved. Okay, so let me see. So as I already told you, there are the four classification of resources on the basis of origin, biotic and abiotic, on the basis of accessibility, renewable and non-renewable, on the basis of ownership, individual, community, nation, and international, on the basis of status of development, potential, developed, and stocked and reserved. Let's just see one by one. Types of resources on the basis of origin. On the basis of origin, we have biotic resources and abiotic resources. The biotic resources are the living, such as human beings, flora, fauna, fisheries, livestock, etc. And abiotic resources are those all things which are composed of non-living things. For example, rocks, minerals, etc. On the basis of accessibility, there are renewable and non-renewable resources, which I already explained you just now. The renewable resources are the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by the physical, chemical, and mechanical process. For example, as you can see there, solar energy and the wind energy, water, forest, and wildlife, etc. The renewable resources may further be divided into the continuous or flow, as I already told you. And non-renewable resources are those resources which have a limited stock. Once the stock are exhausted, it may take thousands of years to be renewed, like coal and petroleum or fossil fuels. And another type of resources on the basis of ownership, individual, community owned resources, then natural resources or international resources. So what are they? Let us see. Individual resources are the resources which is owned by individuals or groups of individuals. Okay, so individual resources are owned and operated by the individuals or the groups of individuals, and which many farms own land which is allotted to them by the government against the payments of revenue. In village there are the people who with land ownership, but there are the many who are landless. Urban people with plots of land and pottery, plantation, pastures, lands, ponds, water in the wells, etc. are some example of the resources ownership by individuals. Okay, so individual resources are the resources which is owned by individuals or the groups of individuals, like a farm of a farmer, fields. You all have your fields that are your individual resources. If you want, you can give to anyone. If you don't want, you can use it by yourself only. So that type of the resources are called individual resources. and just try to make a list of some other resources owned by your household. Community owned resources. So what are the community owned resources? Community owned resources are the resources which are accessible to all members of the community, a type of the resources which are used by the whole member of a village or whole member of a community of your area, like a grazing ground, burial grounds, parks, ponds, picnic spot. These are the resources which everybody can access. Everybody are allowed, no one can discriminate them. Okay, so everybody can use the same resources as they are available in the community or their surroundings. So that type of the resources which are accessible to the all the member of the communities are called community owned resources. For example, the ponds in your village, um, parks, playground, etc. are the example of the what? Are the example of the community owned resources. Next one, natural resources. Natural resources. What do you mean by natural resources? The resources which are or which are belongs to the whole country or the whole nation. Technically, all the resources belongs to the nation, but the country has a legal power to acquire even a private property for public goods. So you might have seen a roads, canal, railways being constructed on the field owned by some individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All the minerals was resources, forest, wildlife, land within the political boundary and the ocean area up to 12 nautical miles, 22.2 kilometers from the coast, termed as territorially water and resources therein belongs to the nation. So means what happened, the resources which are belongs to the nation is known as the natural resources, like a roadways, wildlife, forest. So whatever belongs to the nature is called the natural resources, national resources, sorry. And the last one is what? International resources. Means there are the international institutions which regulated some resources. For example, the oceanic resources, which can be used or utilized by any nation. The resources which belong to the open oceans and the individuals of the country. Any nation can utilize these without concurrence of the international institution. Means every thing which are internationally available are called the international resources, which can be used by anyone of any people of a country, from any people of a country. Okay, so these are the classification of resources, and the resources are also classified on the basis of the status and development. Some of the resources are potential, some of are developed, some of stock, and some of reserves. Let us see what are potential resources. Potential resources are those whose entire quantity may be known and these are not being used at present. Just remember, resources which are found in a region but have not utilized. That means the resources those whose entire quantity may not be known and these are not being used at the present. These resources could be used in the future. So the level of the technology we have at present may not be advanced enough to easily utilize these resources. For example, the uranium found in Ladakh is an example of potential resources that could be used in the future. High-speed wind were a potential resources 200 years ago, but today they are an actual resources. And the wind farm generate energy using the windmills, like in the Netherlands. You will find some in some other country in Tamil Nadu and in the Gujarat coast. You can find some this type of the wind which may not be used but which may be used in the future. That type of the resources is known as potential resources. Means the potential resources whose entire quantity may be known and these are not being used at present, but these resources could be used in future. Now, the developed resources. What do you mean by developed resources? Let us see. Resources which are surveyed and their quantity and quality have been determined for utilization. The development of the resources depend on the technology and the level of the feasibility. Means, so the type of the resources which are surveyed and their quantity and quality have been determined, but the utilization was not in progress. So that type of the resources is known as the developed resources. Stock. Let me see what are so stock of resources. It is the amount of the resources available for use, materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy the human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to assess this, are included among stock. Means stock is a type of the resources which have potential to satisfy, which have abilities to satisfy the human demands, but due to the lack of technology we are not access to these resources. This type of the resources are called stock resources. For example, water is a compound of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. So hydrogen can be used as a rich resource source of energy, but we do not have advanced technology to know how to use it for this purpose. So hence it is considered as a stock. Stock is a type of resources which are available, but due to the lack of technology we are not able to use it. And the reserve resources are the resources are the type of the resources which can be used for meeting future requirements. Like a river water can be used for generating hydroelectricity power, but presently it is being utilized only to the limited extent. Thus, the water in the dam, forest, etc., is a reserve which can be used in future. So, reserve are the type of the resources which are reserved to use in the future for the future use. Okay. So these all topics we already discussed in class 8. That's why I'm just explaining you in brief. For confusion, you can contact me. Okay, in the next video, I will just discuss development of resources. Okay, so till then, go through the book and do this important notes from this chapter. Thank you very much.